Welcome to Paper Quest. I'm Jessie.
And I'm James.
And we're two friends teaming up in our ongoing quest through the infinite library.
Each episode, we get together to discuss our latest buddy read, swap stories on our recent solo reads, and talk about the upcoming books we look forward to reading next.
This is Paper Quest.
All right. So, have you added anything new to your reading list since last we spoke?
Yes. So I actually didn't think I was going to have anything for this current reads section. But I did read Fangs by Sarah Anderson. And it took me 30 minutes to read the whole book. But it's primarily a graphic novel. And it really reminded me of old-fashioned newspaper cartoons. Like the Saturday Funnies or whatever. And it's basically a vampire and a werewolf fall in love, and we just kind of follow the ups and downs of their romance. So, they have a wonderful evening together, and in the morning, the werewolf is like, "Good morning," and he, throws open the blinds or the shades or whatever, and she catches on fire.
I think this is... You screenshotted one of them to me. Yeah. This is that one. Okay.
So, things like that, just very cute, his friends being like, we've never met her. She's not even real. And it's because she sleeps all day. So it was very cute. It's got a couple adult things, but I would definitely say 13 and up. It's PG-13. But it was very fun and it made me laugh. And I would give it a 5. I read it multiple times.
And it's based on something somewhere, right? It's from something.
Yeah. So I think Sarah Anderson, I think she originally posted it online, and then it was eventually, parts of it were published.
Okay.
Yeah. How about you?
I honestly can't remember if I said this last episode, so I'm not going to describe it. I'll just let you know that I finished The Maidens by Alex Michaelides.
Yeah.
Good book, solid 3. I think I said last time that I was probably going to give it a 3. Mm-hmm. Just a solid mystery novel. I don't really have a lot to say about it. It was just a good, simple read.
Okay.
It clicked when I saw the connection with his other book, The Silent Patient. I was like, I see what you did there.
Nice.
And go. Yeah. Do you have another one?
I do. I have one more. So I read Autumn's Tithe by Hannah Parker.
Is this the one that was a fancy book with the gold and everything on it?
Very beautiful book. Basically, every year a girl is chosen from the human world to enter the world of the Fae. It's said that they're going to be given a special assignment that only humans can do. And the girl's family receives gold and riches, but the girl never returns. And they're supposedly living there as royalty for the rest of their lives. And this year that we read about, this girl Larkin, she's determined to be chosen because her friend was chosen the previous year and they had a fight, and she felt like it was just unfinished business. They were best friends, they fought right before, and then she was taken away. And she's like, I need to go find my friend, I need to apologize, and then we can live in, riches for the rest of our lives together. She's not chosen, so she sneaks into the fairy world, which is very hard to do. And this book was a solid 3 for 75% of the time. The last 50 pages wrecked me. I was in tears, I was confused. It went from very classic girl enters magical world, there are issues, there is, fighting a big baddie, and then very fast, I wanted what was the end throughout the whole thing. And it bumped it up to a 4, and it ended on such a cliffhanger that I'm like, I have to read the next one.
Oh, I didn't think I realized it was a series. You might have said that.
No, I didn't realize it was a series either. I thought it was a standalone. And, I didn't really like it until that last 25%. I was like, now I have to find out what is happening. Because it just screwed me up so bad.
Yeah, that's that balance of... That's how I felt about the darker shades, where it's I'm not loving this, but then the ending happens, so I have to see what happens next. It's that sequel trap when books aren't so good, but you're just like, fine, I guess I'll keep going.
Yeah. So I need to look up what the next one is. I don't even know. Like, this might be a new release. I don't even know.
Well, if it came in your bookish box, it probably was, because they don't do the special editions unless it's like a brand new thing.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see where this goes.
All right.
That's all I've read this past couple weeks.
Okay, so for my next book, again, I've mentioned this before. I had just started it last time. It is The Emperor's Soul. It's by Brandon Sanderson. It's a novella in the universe of Elantris, his first novel. There's a magic system called soul stamping where these forgers can make these stamps. They make these intricate patterns on these stamps, basically, and can imprint the soul of something else onto an object. So if you have a door, for example, or a vase, and it's very plain and boring, you can take the soul of another more fancy door or vase, for example, and make it look like that and forge it. And the whole point of the story is that this kingdom's emperor has been assassinated, and they want to try to forge a living soul and imprint the emperor's self back into his body. But to do that, it would technically require years of work of like defining who he was, reading his journals, talking to people who understood him and whatnot. And she has 100 days to do it, this forger, the main character. She has 100 days to do it before the rest of the population realizes what's going on. And it's really short. It's about 130 pages. The main character gets pulled out of an execution situation. She was being executed for being a forger and breaking in and stealing some stuff. I won't go too much into spoilers, but they pull her out at the last second during the Emperor's assassination to create this soul stamp to trick everyone into thinking the Emperor had never died. Finished that. I think... I could be wrong. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5. It's a really, once again, it's Brandon Sanderson. It's a really unique magic system, very detailed, fun read. And then my current book, surprise, surprise, Brandon Sanderson, I'm doing Warbreaker. I've read this book before years and years ago, so I kind of know what's going to happen, but it's all kind of just, in the background, very little details that I remember. It is a color-based magic system. This is one that I'll be doing a side quest for. It's going to be Cosmere Quest number 3. Number 1 should be out by the time you hear this. And that's just a primer on the Cosmere in general. Number 2 is Elantris, and this will be number 3. But that's about all the detail I'll get into since it'll be a main story here soon in our podcast. So that's everything I have. Pretty simple, pretty much the same stuff. Anything else on your end before we jump into things?
No, but I am very excited to jump into our main quest conversation.
We have The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I'm also extremely excited. I will do a book summary. We'll talk spoiler-free first. Hard book to spoil. It's all one big joke. But spoiler-free book discussion and summary. Arthur Dent wakes up to a bulldozing crew who insists that the plans to demolish his home for a vehicle bypass has been in the works for a very long time. Meanwhile, an alien species called the Vogons have arrived, who insist that plans to demolish Earth for a hyperspace bypass has been in the works for a very long time. By an extraordinary coincidence, Arthur's friend, Ford Prefect, just so happens to be an alien who knows how to hitchhike onto the Vogon ships and avoid Earth's destruction with seconds to spare. What ensues is a ridiculous and eye-opening experience on the starship Heart of Gold with a woman Arthur once met at a party, the president of the galaxy, a depressed robot, an overly happy ship, and his now only surviving friend, Ford Prefect. What is Arthur's purpose in life now that his planet is gone? Indeed, what is anyone's purpose in life if not 42? Mm-hmm. I know this book very well, so let's start with you. What did you think?
So I have seen the movie, so I had a general idea of like what I was going into, and a lot of things I really enjoyed. I will say, and I'm sure we'll discuss this more, it took me about half the book to be like, oh, I like this book. And I think again, like, I've noticed more and more I'm very much like a pacing, like how the book is paced will change how I feel about it, I think. And the book is very short. But when we hit like everyone being together on the main ship, suddenly I went from being like, it's fine, to being like, oh, I'm really enjoying this. So I enjoyed it. I want to know, so we are switching favorite books or top books. I want to know why you chose this as the one to use for this switch.
Definitely. So, first of all, in regards to pacing, one of the very first things I thought of when I decided to do this one, in fact, one of my very first notes is about the pacing. You're either going to find this very annoying and hate it, or you're going to find the pacing funny, because if you took out all of the tangents and nonsense, this book could be like 10 pages.
Yeah.
It's a line of dialogue happens, and then the author has to narrate some way off skew thing of like, okay, we weren't even here for this, but now we're talking about something completely different and random. So the pacing, half this book is just like random fake knowledge and describing pan-galactic gargle blasters and dolphins trying to warn us of Earth's destruction and just random nonsense. And then it gets back to the book, and it's a paragraph. And then we're off on tangents again, and it's like, this is either really annoying or really funny. There's only two ways about it. I think part of why I like this book, there is a nostalgia aspect that I can't deny. This book came out in, first of all, I wasn't alive, but this book came out in 1979, which you can feel. There's a vibe for it. Zaphod is very borderline hippie-ish. They talk about digital watches as if they're pretty new and stuff like that. And it eventually got turned into plays, radio broadcasts, and then the movie in 2005. And I was in the tail end of middle school, and my entire neighborhood went collectively together to go see it in theaters.
Oh, that's fun.
I did have the book, and my neighbor friend had the book, and she read it before the movie. I was going to wait till afterwards because she had sort of hinted to me, especially for our age level. She was like, it's kind of hard to read, and it's kind of hard to figure out visually what's happening sometimes. And I was like, okay, well, I'm a visual person. Maybe I'll read it after the movie. And I'm glad that I did. The movie is narrated by Stephen Fry, I think, who is a big name in British culture. I mean, his voice was perfect for this. He narrates the movie and the guidebook itself. The music is spot on. When I was reading the book, all I heard was the music the entire time. And all I heard, well, to be fair, I did the audio drama, so the voice was British, but it was very similar to Stephen Fry. It's just a very iconic and nostalgic movie for me, but it's also legitimately funny. Like, there's certain things that he'll say, and you'll reread it like, that's not a real sentence, so that doesn't make any sense. Like, he had written, there was one book he was making there was one line in which he was making a comparison to something, and it literally wasn't a comparison. This isn't spoilers yet, this is the beginning of the book, but in the very beginning, the ships come, the Vogon ships, and they surround Earth, and they're big blocky structures, and they're hovering above Earth. And the sentence reads, the ships hung in the sky in much the same way that bricks don't.
Yeah.
It's a literal non-comparison. Like, this book is full of nonsense like that doesn't make any sense, but makes all the sense in the world. And it's all the dialogue. It's so cleverly written for being the stupidest thing written. It's so good.
I will say, I am not what's it called? You mark up a book?
Oh, like an annotator?
Yeah, I am not an annotator, but I was annotating this book because there were so many good lines. So, like, most of my notes are quotes because I wanted to make sure to go back to them.
I had to decide. I was like, this book is a story, but it's more like
a voyage.
You like the parts more than the whole sometimes. You're just like, what a great paragraph, or what a great line. Yeah, the story here is great too, but just like these little bits that just stick out, you're like, genius work. Yeah. This is so dumb. I love it. I think that encapsulates why it sticks out to me. And I've read the entire series. I should point out, there are 5 books, and he died before finishing it. So the sixth and final book, you can only purchase on its own. You can't buy it in a collection, as far as I'm aware. The sixth and final book was finished. It was written and finished by Owen Colfer, like Artemis Fowl.
Oh, okay.
He's yeah, and I grew up in Artemis Fowl too. Also very nostalgic. So as an adult, when the final Hitchhiker's Guidebook came out, and I saw Owen Colfer, I was like, oh, that's kind of insane. Very different book though. He clearly just took it in his own direction. Like he just, there was no ending to this book. He had to do it himself. I don't know if there's any notes involved or whatever, but this whole book is just magic all the way through. And the first book, I would say, the movie covers a good portion of the first book, but takes little bits and pieces from the rest of the books as well. But it's, you and I were talking not 20 minutes ago downstairs about Harry Potter and how, like, the movie, all you can see is the movie. When you read the books, you see their faces and you hear the music. And for me, this does that too. I can't not see the round-headed Marvin, and I can't see Zoe Deschanel. And so...
Yeah, no, because I had seen the movie, that's definitely how I was picturing the characters, so...
Small cast.
Are we getting into spoilers?
Yeah, we can... Do you want to say anything else before we jump into it? We both clearly liked it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's spoil it up.
All right, so small cast. Luckily, Ford Prefect, Arthur Dent, Trisha McMillan, or Trillian, Zaphod Beeblebrox, Marvin the Robot, the Mice, whose name honestly I forgot to write them down, the other galactic beings, Eddie the shipboard computer, and everyone's favorite Slarty Bartfast is about all we have in here.
5 times fast. Yeah, so I will be going light on names because we know that I have trouble speaking. So we'll see how that goes.
Brief thoughts, favorite characters?
I am completely obsessed with Marvin. Completely.
Classic character.
Literally, some of my notes were just like, love him. Like, if I ever write a story, I need this Eeyore character. Every line, I was so happy that he was in a scene.
Yeah, I love that there's robots in this galaxy are all like personality dependent. Like, the robot is happy to serve you. The doors are happy to open for you, and they sigh in happiness. So, I completed my job. I wrote that down. He didn't like the happily sliding doors, and he goes, "It's about to open again. I can tell by the intolerable air of smugness it suddenly generates." And I was sitting there cackling. Like, it was so ridiculous. And then he says he hooks up to another ship because he got bored, and the other ship committed suicide. The police ship at the end.
Yeah! I was like, just every time he was around, I was happy.
Yeah, it's funny. Marvin unintentionally saves the day at the end, which he does in the book and also in the movie, but the movie is a whole different saving the day scenario. And the whole idea is, like, Marvin is the personality prototype. So he's like the test subject of, like, the robot personalities, and clearly he got the raw end of the deal on that one.
Yeah. Literally one of his first lines is, "Life, don't talk to me about life." And I just felt that.
And they were like, we weren't, but okay. Who are you?
So he was my favorite. But as I was actually writing notes, I realized that most of my underlines and little, like, yeah, I feel that, like, deep in my soul was, how do I say his name?
Zaphod
Beeblebrox.
Zaphod. President of the galaxy, man.
That was not how I would say that. Yeah, I didn't know. When I saw the movie, I did not enjoy him as much as I did in the book.
Okay.
And everything he said, I was just like, yep. I agree. Like, he said, if there's anything more important than my ego around, I want it caught and shot now.
Mm-hmm.
I have an ego. A little bit.
That's a direct line they use in the movie too. There's so many they pulled from the book and threw into the movie that I was so happy for. And reading this, because I'm more familiar having watched the movie quite literally 100 times, and this book all the way through once or twice. And I was like, oh wow, they took so many lines from the book. But it's lines like that are so. I mean, this is why it's a modern classic.
They're so good. One thing I liked about him, which I also deeply related to, is that he likes to play dumb, but also just sometimes actually is dumb.
That whole explanation was the most funny thing. There was 3 ways he can go.
Yeah. And honestly, like, I've had this conversation. I don't know. I work in corporate world, and they're like, make sure to, like, respect each other. And I've fully been like, I love when people think I'm an idiot, because then it's so much fun to be like, actually, I'm really freaking amazing. And them being like, I just didn't know you were smart. I just love, there's something about that I really appreciate, and I think it's an undervalued moment.
I think what this book does good, whether it's intentional, I mean, this guy's a genius. It was probably intentional. He takes real life things and just maximizes it 1,000%.
Yeah.
Like, you can in some ways ground, everything in this book comes from something grounded in some way. And Arthur is the definition of the grounded character. It's very clear that Arthur is the stand-in for the reader. Mm-hmm. He's the one saying the things that we're saying. He is the one that's just like, don't you realize everything you guys are saying and doing is the stupidest thing ever? What is this world? What is going on? What has my life become? And they even like acknowledge that. I think it's somewhere towards the end where they're just like, yeah, you're the guy that just says, what? Excuse me? Whatever? Like, yeah. And then he's like, what? And like, yeah, see, like, you just don't know and you don't get it. So, yeah, he's the stand-in for us. He's like our grounding. He's the one that has to get the tidbits from the guide the way we're going to get the tidbits from the guide and learn the world as we go.
So, going along with Arthur, one of the first things that I underlined in the whole book was about Arthur's house being torn down. And I know we're jumping around, so I apologize.
As we always do. It's okay.
It's a little manic. But he's talking about, like, he couldn't find the notice that his house was going to be torn down. And they're like, but you did find it, right? And he's like, yeah. It was on display in the bottom of a locked filing cabinet stuck in a disused lavatory with a sign on the door saying, beware of the leopard. And, like, that is bureaucracy. Like, you're like, I have to give a blood sample and... I don't know, my social security number to find out anything in the world.
Well, and that scene, like, that was condensed, and that gets the point across, but that scene was like a paragraph of like, yeah, I went there in step 1. And like, yeah, you're good. But then I had to step 2, yep. Right? And then I had to step 3. And it goes down this rabbit hole of like, yeah, no, there was no chance for him.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah.
And then that's the whole Vogon joke, is they did the same thing to Earth.
Well, yeah. But like you were saying, it's something that is so monotonous. Like, think about going to, like, the DMV.
Yeah.
Or to, like, the Social Security office. Like, it takes forever. It's ridiculous. You have to go back 4 times because you don't have the right piece of paper on the right date and it's not a Tuesday or whatever. And, like, that's how you feel. That sentence is like, yes, that is what we go through dealing with these kind of, government entities, I guess. And his reaction was just how I think everyone feels deep in their soul, but we can't, like, express it because you just have to deal with it.
And how things can just come out of nowhere because, like, his house is fully lived in. Yeah. He doesn't move any furniture out or pictures or belongings, and it's just, Earth dies 5 minutes later, but it's all just obliterated. He's just like, well, everything I own was in there. Like, we haven't done any move outs.
Well, and to go along with that, one of my favorite moments, I don't know, maybe I have a lot of favorite moments, but he says, this must be a Thursday. I never could get a hang of Thursdays.
Yep.
Like, what?
So clearly a Thursday. And yet, I don't know if we ever find out it's a Thursday.
No. I actually, like, remember thinking that, being like, are we coming back to this? That's something that I found was interesting, was there was certain things that stuck out to me for whatever reason, like the Thursday thing. And I thought, like, oh, this must, because you could see, like you just mentioned, parallels with, like, his house and Earth and just many, like, things that ended up matching up. But then there were things like that just, like, hang in the air,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, okay. Or like
Yep.
I guess it's the narrator mentions that someone got a bruise, and then he's like, but we're not going to tell you who because we like a mystery. And then like, I don't know, 30 pages later, that's when the person gets the bruise, but we don't know which person it is still.
Yeah, there was a scene where they were like, we know how you people are. You don't like suspense. You want to know the answer. So these are 3 things or 4 things that's going to happen in future pages. We're going to spoil it now. That way it's not, when you get there, it's not so much a surprise. And then those things happen. You're just like, okay, okay.
Yeah. So very interesting.
That whole, the whole opening does a lot for the story. It sets up a lot of stuff and a lot of parallels. And I love how Ford makes the construction guys look so stupid, where he convinces him that maybe he should lay down in front of the house and stuff. I'm just like, God, this is so good. Yeah.
Maybe we should talk about Ford then.
Ford Prefect.
I only have 2 notes about him.
Okay.
So I think he didn't do as much for me compared to the other characters.
Agreed 100%.
But something I thought was interesting is that they have footnotes in the book. So like they go in to explain how he got his name and where he's from originally, because he's not from Earth.
He's from Beetlejuice 4 or 5 or something.
And for some reason, this is another completely unexplained, but like I am so confused and I had to read the sentence 5 times. But Ford's father both fathered and uncled him. Are we not concerned about that? Why are we not addressing that? Why are we not going back to that?
And Zaphod's
Cousin.
his cousin or something, yeah.
Somehow. And like, his father is his uncle? That's not okay.
Yep. It's just a bunch of random nonsense you just go along with.
Well, and so then he says that he got stuck on Earth, but at one point they talk about that he was exiled to Earth, but they don't explain why he was exiled.
Yeah, well, because we know that he's an editor for the guide.
Right.
And he went there to write, because the only entry in the guide about Earth is harmless. And so he's like, well, let's go learn more about Earth. And then he gets stranded, and he's stuck there for 15 years, even though Zaphod briefly visited and he had no idea and stuff like that. And after 15 years, he's decided Earth is mostly harmless. That's all we get out of that. That's how little of importance the Earth is to the rest of the universe. I don't remember them saying he was exiled, but...
It's just like one line, and I was like, but why is this whole time he's been saying that he's just stuck? Like... Is there more to this?
It's possible. This book stands out to me the most. The other books, I barely remember except for some major plot lines. Because as you can imagine, the rest of the books also have so many tangents and jumping off points and yeah.
Yeah, so...
But yeah, Ford is very much just there. He's there to help us get to space and then present us with the guide. And he does little things here and there. He's not major for me either.
Yeah, I didn't, like, dislike him.
Yeah.
But I wasn't...
There's standouts more than him.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily excited about him, I guess. I also was surprised that I wasn't as excited about Trillian. Because it is, in my mind, Zooey Deschanel. And, like, that's how that's actually a major part that I remember of the movie. I don't know the last time I saw it, probably 10 years or something. But in the book, she wasn't as exciting for me.
And some characters aren't as prominent or have much to do. Not that she isn't prominent, but, you know, the movie had to fit more for everyone, and the book has 5 or 6 books to, like, spread them out across. So there are more standout characters for as short this book was.
So I will say... they are, her and Zaphod are on the ship.
The Heart of Gold.
Heart of Gold, and they pick up Ford and Arthur, and they're like, I don't know what it's called, but they're like returning to normalcy.
Yeah, normality.
Normality. And Um, she says she's like talking to them over like the loudspeaker.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, anything you still can't cope with is therefore your own problem. Please relax.
Yeah.
I feel like we need that like in every office, every like I'm going to put that in my signature block. Like people need to take that to heart.
I love that. She's counting down the normality. There's weird things going on. Normality 1 to 1 against. We're back to it. If you can't handle it, not my problem.
Yeah. And she's, they were just seeing like their faces were melting or whatever. They're like on an acid trip.
Yeah.
Like based on what I can perceive an acid trip is like I don't actually know. But they're having this like brain meltdown. And then she's just like, deal with it. I don't know.
Because we know even though normality is restored, Arthur is about to be thrown into just some nonsense. And
yeah.
He's not going to handle any of it.
So, speaking of nonsense, and we talked about this a little bit, there are just like random things.
So many.
And I literally wrote in my notes, sometimes things just seem super random and I couldn't like comprehend if they were important or not. So one thing that they say is a huluvu is a super intelligent shade of the color blue.
Yes. That like it's nonsense, but it's hilarious.
I know, but I had to read it like 4 times.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't know what that means.
Because they were implying that the huluvu was a literal alien species.
Right.
But as an alien species, its existence was just as a different shade of blue. And you're like, can we define that more? Yeah. No? Oh, we're moving along? Okay, fine.
Yeah. And then there's a whole paragraph having to do with the creation of the improbability drive. And I literally just like circled it and wrote next to it like, this is a lot. It was like, had to do with tea and there was things. And I was like,
it's the most...
is this important? No. Okay. Like, I didn't know. I read it like multiple times. I'm like, what am I missing here? I guess it's not important.
It's the driest, most British humor.
It is.
And you're right. That it was a large chunk of description, of exclamation. And then again, we move on. It's like, if you wanted a reason as to why the infinite improbability drive exists, there it is. It's not important, but it's there.
Yeah. Some intern decided that he needed to do this thing and this thing and this thing, and then made some tea, and then it works.
They were bringing probability into it. It was like, it was improbable to make, but if something is improbable, it's still possible. Therefore, it must be possible to make.
Right.
And then he accidentally makes it based on the fact that it's improbable to make it. And tea is involved.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, it's that sciencey nonsense humor of like improbability, so it must be possible.
Like, I can follow it, but also like, yeah, I kept being like, does this matter?
Does it matter or make sense? Probably not. But it's still good.
So I think we have one last character, which I was so proud of myself. So I was reading, and the shipboard computer starts talking. And
Hi there!
I wrote next to it, this needs a name. And in 15 pages later, his name is Eddie.
Yes.
And I was like, thank you. You heard my thoughts. I appreciate the author for doing that, because I was like, he's just got such a personality. He is happy. And there's one point where he's like cheering them on when they're like about to get hit by a missile. And he's like, you can do it. And I'm like, I need this guy in my life.
Yeah, they put the two most opposite robots on the ship, Marvin and Eddie. Eddie, clearly not the prototype. Eddie's great. I love when they tried to like change his personality, and they're like, well, this is even worse. I can't do this.
Yeah, he turned into like a mom, and he was like, put your coat on.
Yep.
And I was like, no, turn him back.
Yeah. But I love every time he went to go say something he's always saying, or like to prod them on or whatever. They're just like, please don't say it. Just do the job we're asking. Stop talking. We don't want to hear it again.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoyed the robots, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, what's funny, I know what I was going to say a few minutes ago, because you were talking about Trillion and normality, and if you can't handle it, not my problem. His writing, for me, somehow comes off so matter-of-fact, while also being humorous. The way the book is written, or the way the book is even read to you if you're doing the audio, they're just like, these are facts. This is what's happening. But at the same time, they're just so funny. It's almost like they're not supposed to be funny, but they are supposed to be funny. But they are just matter of factly telling a story, and it's just like, this is a very unique, special kind of writing.
The thing is even though it is comedy, it is very intelligent humor, and there are literary parallels throughout the story
Entirely.
and there are like just very, like I said, things that may not matter in the moment and then they come back and matter later. And there were a lot of very, like, I don't think like a 12-year-old could read this and fully appreciate, like, they might find it funny, but I don't think that they could fully appreciate the, like, intricacies of the whole piece of literature, because that's truly what it is. And
Yep.
It felt like, it didn't just feel like a story. It felt like something important almost.
Yeah, having read this in middle school and having remembered a lot of it, it still failed on me a lot. Some of it at the time I realized it failed on me, and some of it reading now I was like, oh, back then, way over my head. Mm-hmm. Now I get it. There are scenes that are so convoluted and sciencey. It's not even real science, of course, and sciencey, like when they get picked up by the ship and the starship Heart of Gold comes into existence around them via the infinite improbability drive. Them trying to explain that they're just touching every moment in time, every moment in universe and time at the same time, where anything can happen. Trying to wrap my head around this acid trip exists because everything is happening that could happen or would or whatever. That scene, the younger me trying to read that, I remember rereading that so many times, thinking, I'm reading a different book. Like, I don't know what's going on. I can't understand this. And then I was thinking about the movie and how they would turn into like flowers or yarn people, and I was like, oh, they're just doing like this weird, you could be anything or anything could happen around you. Like, there's just some hard scenes to understand in here.
Yeah,
because they're in space and they're like, all of a sudden they hit concrete and they're on the pavement. And I'm like, what pavement? Wait, are we on a planet now? I'm sorry, we were just in space. Like, them trying to explain that, it wasn't written to be, you have to figure it out on your own.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed that it was intelligent humor. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed that it was short and there were parts that were challenging, but those parts I think made it better.
Yeah.
So, what's the guy's name that I am never going to ever say his name that when you talk about?
Slarty Bartfast.
Yep. Barty Slartfast.
Barty Slartfast. In addition to this character, just a question for next. Believe it or not, this book has a story.
Yeah.
Somehow, in these pages of tangents, about the Earth, the supercomputer, and the meaning of life. And I want to know what you thought about the actual story to this book.
So...
And the mice.
Yeah. So my general understanding is that there is a supercomputer, Deep Thought. And it says that the meaning of life is 42, and then they're like, the heck, what's the question though? And
it could only answer in the way a computer would know to answer, which is a number.
Right.
Which does nothing for humans.
So I took the computer as being a he.
I took it as a he. In the movie, it's a girl, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep.
But the computer goes, I'll teach you to make a better computer that will give you the right answer, and the Earth is that computer.
The right question, apparently, because we don't know the question.
Sorry. So the Earth is supposed to be that computer, and he's like, and I will call it Earth. And the dudes are like, that's a dumb name. I'm like, yeah, compared to everyone else's. But I think it's an interesting question, and I think that, or an interesting premise, and I think that you have this kind of very bland human at the heart of it all, makes it more fun, because it's like, they ask him, well, what should the question be? Earth is now gone, or answer. It
could be in like the DNA of your mind because you were an Earthling.
Yeah, like, almost like there's like a fail-safe implanted into his brain somehow, which like I get it, but he's just like, what? Like, I just want a cup of good tea. Like, please don't
Yeah.
And they're like, the mice are like, we want to take out your brain. We'll give you a new one. And he's like, no, like, no, you can't do that. So I liked the whole concept of it. And I don't remember from the movie being like, maybe I didn't understand when I saw it.
It's very possible.
But that the Earth was the other computer. I remember the mice. I remember Zoe. I remember
Zoe. Yeah.
I remember Marvin. But yeah, I just that didn't hit with me for whatever reason. So when I read it, I was like, oh.
Well, the movie, and I say this lightly, turns it into a mystery because in the movie, right when they get on the Starship Heart of Gold, Zaphod shows them like a broadcast of what happened with Deep Thought, and the broadcast stops. Deep Thought goes, "I'll make an even better computer, and it shall be called," and then it cuts off, and he's like, "Yeah, we don't have the rest of the footage, so we don't know yet that the Earth was the computer. We don't know why it was bad that it got blown up because it was the supercomputer until the very end when they have to rebuild it." Did you catch on the foreshadowing, if you will? The beginning of the book starts, or somewhere in the book, maybe not right in the beginning, but it's beginning of the movie for sure. The narrator mentions, "Oh, Earthlings, they think they're the smartest people on the planet, basically. But actually, they're the third. The second is dolphins." And you're like, "Well, then who's the first?"
Yeah.
And then later on, it gets brought up again, and you're like, "Okay, but who's the first?" And then he mentions it. He's like, "Well, mice are the most intelligent.
Yeah.
And apparently, they're just some other dimensional beings who are experimenting on us, and not the other way around."
So I will say I didn't remember the mice until I read that Trillian had them with her, and I was like, "Oh yeah, the mice thing!" Like, and then I did like that they were like in little glasses or whatever, and they like floated.
Yeah, like wine glasses moving around on a scooter or something.
And I was like, I'm not sure what I'm picturing right now, but I like it.
Which they did in the movie too. They sat in wine glasses. So.
So one thing I wanted to note, and this kind of dovetails into it, and again of like it being really smart, is so the two people who created Deep Thought, Roomfondle,
yes,
and I'm not gonna try something.
Let me see. I didn't write it down. Let me see.
Right there.
Magic Thought. Magic Thought. It autocorrected. It was Magic Thighs. Right? It was
no,
Magic
that's
Thighs.
how it's written.
Okay, well, I did the audio, and he called it Magic Thighs.
Okay. So, they help to build, or they get the answer of 42 from Deep Thought. And they're the ones who are like, but what's the question? And they reminded me of the Knight and Knave problem. Do you know what that is? Where one always lies and the other always tells the truth. And I literally was sitting there being like, did someone incorporate a logic problem in a funny way into a story? And I'm like reading it being like, this is Knight and Knave. Like for whatever reason, that's all I could picture. Is like this logic problem that was happening. And I was like, but also like logic, computers, computer logic, they're building a thing and like, I don't know. My brain was just like mind blown by the intelligence or what I perceived. Could be totally wrong. I could be like, I don't know, making things up and like reading into things that I shouldn't be read into. But it just felt so smart.
It's funny how clever the book is given the way it was written, because he wrote kind of serialized, not as he published or anything from my understanding, but as he wrote like at his desk or whatever. For example, when they get thrown out of the Vogon ships and they're about to suffocate in space, that was the furthest he wrote. He didn't know what was going to happen. The whole reason the improbability drive exists is because he had no other thoughts on how to save him. So it's funny, for as serialized as he wrote along the way, where he just solved problems, the next time he sat down, he's like, okay, so what do I do next? I have no plan. Just like, this is pretty detailed for a book that you just wrote on the fly.
I didn't know that, but I think that's really interesting given the fact that in the book, Ford was just kind of like, see, I knew I'd figure out something.
Yeah.
And like, really, that's what the writer
That's the author.
That's great. Something else I wanted to say was that the guide itself was almost a character.
Oh, 100% a character.
And there was one section where it said that the guide has been compiled and recompiled many times over many years under many editors, and it has contributions from travelers and researchers, etc. I wanted the rest of the books to be like that. And I guess they kind of are because the original author dies. But I almost wanted, like, and I mean, who knows nowadays? I'm sure there's, like, fan-written stuff. But I thought it would be really neat for, like, him to take his creation, like, hand it off to someone else purposefully.
Oh.
And for them to iterate upon it.
Okay.
Because that is what the guide is.
Mm-hmm.
But I did like that it would give us kind of this, like, I pictured an encyclopedia, and it would, like, give us this random information, like an encyclopedia does sometimes.
Like the Encyclopedia Galactica.
Yeah.
The lesser Hitchhiker's Guide.
Obviously. No, but I mean, like, so when I was a kid, because I'm that old, I had the, like,
the
A
volume
to Z.
set.
Yeah. And I remember, like, you know, being like, well, where's zebras live? And, like, going and looking it up because I didn't have Google. And now my child is like, Google it all the time. But yeah, that's kind of what I was picturing, but, like, I guess in a computer, but also massive.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of like, it was like Wikipedia. Like, anyone can contribute, and you can say, you know, that someone was born 100 years ago when they weren't. You know, like, it's opinion-based versus fact-based.
Yeah, it's all digital. It's very much a handheld Google computer, and there's just random knowledge in there, and sometimes they go back and fix it up, and sometimes they visit planets to get the right factual information, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So I will say, and I guess this might be jumping, but the ending didn't work for me.
In what respect? What was the ending that didn't?
It just wasn't an ending.
Okay, well, that's fair.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Oh, you won't like the last book in the series then before he dies.
It definitely wasn't, like, wrapped up. Like, I didn't feel like the story was over at all.
Mm-hmm.
And like, in other series you read, at least there's, like, some things tied up, but basically it was kind of like, I won't say the show, but there's, like, a show that just is well known for just, like, fading to black at the end.
Everyone knows what show you're talking about.
Or even, like, Seinfeld, it just ended with, like, a normal day. Like, there's no ending, and for me that's very unsatisfying.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, that goes back into his serialized storytelling.
Yeah.
I don't know what to find this book as the book, right? Like, why is it not? Because book 2 just picks right back up, right? Like, why stop there? Because the second book picks up as if we're still reading the first book. Like, every book is just one long, continuous story. Because I think he was just like, this is where I stopped writing. Let's publish it now. And then I'll write the next part in book 2. Like, that's clearly what happened here.
The 70s was a wild time.
Yeah, clearly it was like, yeah, there's 5 books, but it's one book. It goes right through. Like,
yeah. So I definitely feel like I need to keep going to, like, know what's going to happen. But, like, I don't think I would ever recommend to someone to, like, just read just this.
Because the ending of the movie is not the ending of this book. The ending of the movie has closure because it took from later in the series.
Okay. So I remember watching the end of the movie and being like, oh, okay, that's an ending.
Yep.
There's no real ending here. And yeah, so I definitely feel like I need to keep going, which is fine. I enjoyed it, but it was unsatisfying.
I can't fault you at all. It is literally not an ending, so I totally get that. I guess you'll just have to finish it.
We'll see.
I don't expect you to ever read the rest, but if you do, it's all this good.
I might. I'm tempted, especially if there's more Marvin.
I'm kind of tempted. It does go in all different directions. Like, it gets very different in lots of different ways. They kind of hint at certain things in the movie, like when he's at the end, they're all getting ready to leave happily ever after, and he's like, I know this great restaurant at the end of the universe. That's one of the books, The Restaurant
yeah.
at the End of the Universe.
Mm-hmm.
So that author has a lot to say and so many good tangents and pieces of writing. I just can't.
So, do you have a favorite character? We know mine. So,
Oh man, oh man, oh man. That's really, really hard to say.
do you have a not favorite character? Do you have an inverse?
If we're going by the book, it's probably Ford or Trillian.
Mm-hmm.
But
They just don't stand out as much.
they don't stand out as much. They're not doing much right now. The problem is that everyone else has so many standout things to say or do. But obviously the computers are great.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Zaphod's way of thinking and just being cool with stuff. And I'm wondering, not that it was hard to figure this out, but did you pick up on Zaphod's weird ongoing storyline where there's something wrong with his memory?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He cut out his brain, part of
Yeah.
his brain. So, something I liked he said is I liked that he was unsure if he was crazy or not. And he said, I only know as much about myself as my mind can work out under its current conditions, and its current conditions are not good. And, like, I kind of feel that. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing the best I can given what I've got, you know?
What's funny is the book, for as ridiculous as it is all very, I think I said this already, grounded and human-based.
Yeah.
The storyline itself is just what we've been thinking all along is like, what is that question? Why does anything exist? Like it's all got a lot to say about real life real life stuff, but
I will say I liked book Zaphod better than I remember liking movie version of him.
I think if you watch the movie again, it might be fairly on par. The actor that plays Zaphod, don't ask me his name because I forget. I know him. I
can picture him.
Yeah. He's a fun actor. He does some very specific stuff with Zaphod. I think Zaphod does in the movie come off specifically as an absolute idiot.
Mm-hmm.
And in the books, he's dumb too. But in the books, he's this intelligent dumb. Like, you're dumb, but maybe you're not. And also there's like something going on with you.
Yeah.
Whereas the movies put him up as just like the dumb guy that stole the ship and somehow became president.
Yeah.
He's dumb in both mediums, but is played different. Yeah.
I think there's just more detail in the book. Maybe.
Yeah. But some of the lines you like are also in the movie. So I wonder how you would think with the movie again.
Yeah, I need to rewatch it. I actually
it's such a short movie.
I told my son I would rewatch it with him. So
and a kid watching that movie, a kid couldn't read the book very well, but watching the movie, perfection.
Yeah.
Maybe some things still go over the head for sure, but the movie's easy.
Yeah. Do you have any other things that we missed? I feel like you probably have more notes than I do.
I would love to try a real version of a pan-galactic gargle blaster, which Zaphod apparently invented. It feels like having your brain smashed out by a slice of lemon wrapped around a large gold brick.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting drink description.
I feel like that's like, have you ever watched a YouTuber and they're like trying to describe a smell or a taste and they're like, you know, it smells like the inside of your grandma's closet, and you're like, the heck?
but also I know what that smells like.
Yeah.
And my only other thought was, would you put the babelfish in your ear?
I guess I would have to, right?
You would have to, but when they were describing it, and if you see, like, I always picture the movie version, the little yellow, like, fat-looking thing. I'm just like, that would be a hard couple minutes of my life to get through.
Yeah. So, one question I had for you that I remember writing down in the book was, so they have the ability to create custom planets.
Mm-hmm.
What is something you would have on your custom planet?
Oh God! The whole planet. One side would be tropical, the other side would be mountains. I don't need anything else. I can have both seasons if I want. And I feel like it would just be a very adventurous planet. It's a very poor, boring answer. It would just be trails and water and things to do and you know,
outdoorsy things.
I want to also look like, I forget where it is. You know, the really high end place. It's like probably on like every desktop background where it's like a curvy wooden boardwalk with all the huts around it.
Oh yeah, like Fiji, I think.
Yeah,
Or
there's a
something
YouTuber
like
we watched that went there once.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
really cool. I'm just like, I want a lot of that aspect going on my planet. That's what I want it to be, like a retirement planet, but like for now.
that. Okay.
I just want it all like that.
I can get behind that. I would visit that planet.
What about you?
So see, I thought of the question, but I didn't think about the question. But I actually really like forests, and like I very much feel like we've gone on hikes together. In my brain, I'm just like a princess having an adventure through the forest. And so that's what I would want. Is like I really like rocky forest areas with lots of
You want a
paths.
whole planet of Old Rag Mountain.
Kind of.
Mm-hmm.
With ponds and like hot springs and a castle and yeah, probably a couple libraries and a couple coffee shops.
Yeah.
And like a big winery.
Yeah, I guess I should have mentioned food and drink to some degree, but that's also kind of a given with both of us.
Yeah.
God. I think what I'm looking for is that cruise ship experience worldwide. I want the
Yeah.
worldwide cruise ship experience. That's
Yeah.
what I want. That's a much better answer.
So what did you rate this book?
Surprisingly, a 5 out of
Ooh,
5.
no surprise.
Yeah. Hence why I gave it to you. If I could, a 6 out of 5, maybe a 10 out of 5, or a 42 out of 5.
42 out of 5. There you go.
Um,
Wait, do we know the question?
we do not know the question.
Okay, because the mice made up a question, but that wasn't the question.
Yeah, there was discussion back and forth of what the mice wanted. The mice were going to go on a talk show back home, and they needed
Yeah.
like an answer or a
Yeah.
question to go along with the answer 42. One of them, this was either movie or book or both, but they were like, how many paths must a man walk down?
Yeah, it was in
Or-
the book.
In the book too. Okay, so they made up questions to take home,
But we don't know the official question.
but there's no official question
Oh, good.
because, well, and that's why these Magrathians were woken up to rebuild the planet
Right.
before the 5 minutes so that they can finish the programming.
So, I give it a 4, mainly for the ending, and for the fact that like I didn't like it until page 90. Like I liked it, but I wasn't into it until page 90, and I think it's only like 200 pages.
Yeah, it's like 140 actually. It's insane.
Yeah, it's not
insane.
a lot.
It's so quick.
And so that was a large chunk of the book where I was like, it's okay.
Well, and I can give that to you no problem because when I first read the book, I was in the same situation of we're here in this exact position for a long time. He's going on tangents, so the story's not progressing.
Yeah.
And it's not until you understand the author of the book or go back to reread it where you're just like, this is different the second time around. Like I said, the movie helped for me where I was like, even the beginning of this book is funny. Just the first page where he describes how backwater Earth is and how we think watches are a pretty neat idea. And just that becomes funnier the more and more I read it where I'm like, the beginning of the book is better now.
Yeah, I could see that. And it was just like once they were on the ship, once the robots were there, like it went from being like, all right, it's fine to like I finished it in like an hour. You know, like the pacing completely changed. I was totally in. I just want to know everything about Marvin ever. He was very much like, you know, in like Disney movies where there's like Rapunzel has Pasquale and like
The companion part.
yeah, I liked all those little like side characters that like are very impactful but also either like annoying or like can't talk or whatever.
Yep.
Like there's something about them that
Love it.
make me happy.
Hmm. Yeah, Marvin and Eddie, I loved it. And the audio, the guy doing it, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but Eddie kind of, I couldn't tell if Eddie was supposed to sound country or slightly gay, but his voice for Eddie every time I was like, oh my God, this is the funniest thing ever. I'm so glad I did the audio because Eddie is so good in this book. Yeah. I will have you introduce the book that you gave me for next episode.
Yeah, so next episode we are reading Carpe Diem by Autumn Cornwell. And
Real quick, this is the most opposite book. It could not be more grounded in reality.
and I think if you listen to both of the episodes, you will understand much more about James and I because they are very different, and I think they reflect us very much.
Spoiler alert, I've read Carpe Diem already. I just finished it yesterday or so. And
you know why I like it.
Page 1 or 2, I was like, oh, she just sees herself in this. I get it. Like, she just thinks she's in this family.
I am. Or I want to be.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I have probably read it 10 times. I read it once a year. And not just like because it's like a tradition. It's like I see it and I'm like, oh yeah, like I have feels about this book.
I actually have so much I plan to write about on this. I'm really excited to talk about it. I think of all the books we've read, I have the most to write about it. I'm like, there's a lot to love and a lot to really hate in the way you're supposed to love it.
So I'm excited to talk about it. I did choose it because 1, I've read it so many times. 2, it's standalone. And 3, it definitely had some sort of imprint on who I am now as a person. I'm in my 30s. I probably read it maybe even when I was a teenager. So
I'm already like, should we just do this now? Double feature? Because I have so many things to say.
No.
But we'll hold off.
Not yet. So yeah, I'm very excited for that.
Alrighty. Well, as usual, social media.
Yeah, please rate and subscribe wherever you are listening to this podcast. Follow us at Paper Quest Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Leave us a comment so that we know what books you're reading. Maybe tell us one of your all-time favorite books, and we may read it and put it in a podcast.
$1 Patreon and get episodes 2 days early and support the show. And email us comments, questions, concerns, etc. Things you want to hear, things you don't want to hear, things we should change or test out. paperquestpod@gmail.com. Until next time.
Bye.
Bye.